It's my pleasure to read those meditations. In the textbook, by the way, there are dozens of them. This is a copy of our textbook, in case you haven't seen it before. This is a good book to have and refer to. When I first started in the teaching, I would be going to the glossary oftentimes because I was attempting to understand the words and the terminology. I want to mention another book because I've had several conversations this weekend, and people are finding this all over the place because of this book. I was called this weekend, I spoke to at least 5 or 6 people. I know Louise, hey, who is she? Where did she come from? And I could do a whole class on her, as everyone knows, and we do a class on the teachings of Louise Hay, and Ernest Holmes, actually, every Thursday night. For those of you who are here and trying to figure out the connection to Louise Hay and what we do on Sunday morning, Louise Hay was one of the most famous students of our center, our church. She was here back during the days of Raymond Charles Barker, the founder. And she wrote this book, which is, well, this book was an edition where 3 million copies had sold, but the book went on to sell 65 million copies and has been read by over 100 million people. So we have a great debt of gratitude to Louise because she studied here, she used these principles, which are really come from our teaching, and she did a lot for the whole New Thought movement. She's like a huge B12 shot. She's got the whole world became aware of what we do because of her. So we love her work. We celebrate everything that she taught, which is an extension of Ernest Holmes, every Thursday night. I would suggest everybody acquire the book. This is a great place to start, plus a couple of Ernest Holmes' earlier books. I'm not saying don't buy the textbook, because the textbook, if you love what we teach, will always be a great reference book you refer to. But these books are great places to start. And we also have a class on Tuesday night, which is going over the basics. We're in our 4th week. And I'm deliberately doing that class so it's a big overview of the teaching. It's a lot to take in, but you don't have to worry about it. You can just receive the information, let it wash over you. You'll get a bunch out of it, and it's the type of thing you could listen to over and over again. It's good. We're getting a lot of positive comments. So we meet Tuesdays for 3 more weeks on that Science of Mind class. It's principally authored by Frederick Bales. And then, of course, Thursday is our You Can Heal Your Life class at 7 p.m. And every Sunday is our lesson. Usually we have a recorded piece today where we have technical challenges, so I stepped in to do the meditation. We have like a 1-minute little commercial here, and then we're going to have our talk on forgiveness. Today we're talking about forgiveness. Raymond Charles Barker, by the way, was the founder of this center. He was supposed to be a very colorful man. When I was a young man, they used to say, Raymond Charles Barker was the Pope of religious science. And, of course, I don't know what that meant. But one of my teachers said he was very flamboyant, and I think he was short in stature. I think he was a little bit chubby. Was that true? Okay. And he would show up in a fire engine red suit or a yellow suit. He would make an entrance, and he was a great speaker, and he was down there at Alice Tully Hall and places in New York City, and he was a character, and everybody loved him. He was probably the most colorful of our ministers. There's been 4 of us, and he wasn't, we don't want to compare ourselves to each other, but he was unique, as we all are. Oftentimes I borrow from his work because I find him to be brilliant, insightful, oftentimes funny, sometimes sarcastic, and I try to rework some of his pearls of wisdom, and I try to frame them in a more contemporary way, if I can. This week was a hectic week at the center, and a friend of mine sent me an essay that Mr. Barker put together on forgiveness. And so I've used some of it, and then I have some of my own. And it's a subject, you know, we know the importance of forgiveness, but I don't know if we know how important it is. And sometimes we think forgiveness is all about forgiving others, and there's more to it than that. So I'm going to use some of his words interspersed with some of my interpretation, and hopefully somebody gets something out of everything, because I think it's an issue that's common to everyone. And to the extent we're able to do some of this stuff, I think our life greatly improves. Mr. Barker, Dr. Barker, started out by saying there is no such thing in all the world as a truly evil person. He says, but there's a lot of people who use life tragically. And that ties into what Ernest Holmes said, where, you know, Ernest Holmes says there's power for good in the universe, and you have power, you have personal power to create the kind of life that you want to, but the fact of the matter is most people don't create the kind of life that they want to. So they create lives where there's a lot of misery, pain, and people do a lot of things that are, as Barker would say, that are tragic, because it really doesn't have to be that way. He said there's been many people in your experience, in your own life, no matter how old you are, most likely, that you don't want to forgive. You know, you might have been in relationships that have been horrendous. You might have been in business situations or employment situations. You know, you've lived life, and you've taken some hits, as we say, or you know, you've just been through it. And I've had students over the years. I remember one lady, Susan, in particular, probably 20 years ago now, maybe longer. She said, I'm never going to forgive my father. It's just never, ever, ever going to happen. And without getting into her whole story, and she's since passed away, she was a very heavy woman, and she had so much rage in her. And she said, Greg, I love the teaching. I believe the teaching. I want to forgive everybody. I want to be happy. I want to be joyous. I want to be free. But I'm never going to forgive that man. You know, so what do you do with a student like that? You know, it's not my business to do. I'm here to teach. And then I'm also here to try to practice it myself to the best of my ability. In Susan's case, this beautiful woman, and she was very beautiful. She's in her, I think as I recall, her mid-50s, wound up having a massive heart attack in an elevator in a hospital in Florida. And she was one of my best students, but this was one spot where she wasn't willing to. She had actually, whenever the thought of her father came up, rage came forward. And it was always very sad to me, because there are these places within us. If we hang on to those types of rage, you know, if you can't find a way to deal with them, to neutralize them, to make them better, you know, we pay a huge price for it. You know, there's also people in our lives, we think about it, forgiveness, that you've thought have been downright nasty, they've been ignorant, you might say they've been stupid, they've just been hurtful to you. And you could have assessed in your own way, especially when you're younger, that they were awful, they were mean, disgusting. And the thing that Barker wanted us to understand is he wanted us to realize that the lack of forgiveness on my part will do them no harm. So in other words, if you're nurturing this thing, and you might be right, see, being right is overrated. You know, there's an old expression, I'm sure you've all heard it. Would you rather be right, or would you rather be happy? If you can hang on to a grudge till the cows come home, you can hang on to that grudge and you can nurture it, and you can do some version of ain't it awful, they've done this to me, these sons of so-and-sos, I hate them, and all of that. Now, there's nothing particularly enlightened about being full of hatred. You know, if you just can imagine yourself, some of you can't even imagine it anymore, being full of hatred. Somebody really did something awful to you, and it could be anybody. And all that hate and all that anger, and you might be self-righteous, and you might say, just like Susan, I'm never going to give them, and they should burn in hell and all the rest, and okay, so when you do that, Barker is saying, you realize that lack of forgiveness on your part is doing absolutely no harm to them. And you also realize that it harms you. So we forgive people, he said, not because we're so holy or sanctimonious. We forgive them not because we're so good either. Not because of our religion, whatever our religion might be, or whatever our religion instructs us to do. We don't forgive these people for all those reasons. We forgive them because our own sense of safety, our own sense of security, our own desire to live happily has informed us that this is really a better way to live, because then at last you could master your life. We have a teaching that will allow you to demonstrate great things, greater prosperity, greater health, greater wealth, greater peace, all the things that you want are available. But hanging on to resentments, anger, and judgments and criticism and all that stuff will absolutely, absolutely get in the way. And so when we forgive, ultimately, we forgive because we want to have a better life experience. He said, this is Barker, forgiveness is what he calls spiritual life insurance. And I'm willing to forgive, like you buy a life insurance policy. I'm going to forgive everybody. I remember my brother Bobby, it was some family argument, and there were 6 of us, and they wanted to split us up, and they were counting on me to vote with them. And, there's a problem with Greg, he says, because he's always going to forgive them. And it's not that I was any kind of goody two-shoes, but I just didn't see the value in hanging on to the resentment. And it's true, we'll always be reaching out first and sending the cards, because I've learned that I don't want to have that resentment within me. It's not worth it to me. It's just not worth it. Because if I have to hang on to anger towards anybody, and I bring that into my awareness every day, I hate this person. I can't stand this person. How do you think that's going to work out in my life? Judith, what do you think? I just wake up with that resentment. I nurse that resentment. Here's the thing. We run a church. Things happen in a church, and there's people who've done some really horrible things. I've been here for 5 years, and I really don't have any choice, is the way I see it, but you forgive, because what you understand with some of the folks that pulled off some of the stunts that they pulled off, these are people coming to a center, and we understand from Louise that everyone is doing the best that they can with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that they have. Nobody really, truthfully, is coming out into the life. They're not living their life trying to destroy people, not really. They're just expressing anger. They're expressing a discontent. They're expressing a place where they're broken. They're expressing their pain. And, when you come into a spiritual center, it doesn't always attract people that are perfectly evolved. People are coming in places like this who have gone through some pain. And they come here and they're looking for healing, they're looking for acceptance, and they're looking to learn. And oftentimes they project upon you things. And this is not just in a church, this is your own life. You've had close relationships and you think they're going wonderfully. And, it could be the love of your life or a friend, and all of a sudden your friend is projecting their pain. Their issues get thrown your way, is really what it boils down to. And what are you going to do with all that? So we'll get into it a little bit more. All of you have heard the expression before, the high cost of low living, right? So if you're living a life that's full of anger, resentment, jealousy, envy, and you're gossiping your life away, and you're just talking, garbage, and you're talking about things you don't know about, and you're judging people about things you don't know about, and you're joining in the crowd with ain't it awful, and you're participating in all of that. you know, okay, people do it, the whole world does it, but most of the people who live in a teaching like this, once you realize you're involved in any of that type of conversation, you stop. Because, you know, I can sit down there with my mind and be pure evil. By that I mean I could see a flaw, and I could see it, and I could keep seeing it. Next thing I know, you're guilty of all things. You know, we can do that. This is the high cost of low living. Our teaching really calls us to do something else. Our teaching calls us to see the good in everybody. And really that's a Christian principle. And I today have pulled in some references from the New Testament, which I don't usually do, but they're very appropriate today. So Barker would say forgiveness is having spiritual life insurance. There's another book that I have loved which says, I refuse to be offended because I'm not going to let whatever the heck any person, place, or thing, whatever they've done, I'm not going to let it get my goat. Now, you probably haven't heard that expression in 30 years either because it's an old one. And I can't even remember where it came from. But the idea, if someone's getting your goat, it means they're getting the better of you. So I refuse to be offended. Forgiveness is spiritual life insurance. If I keep talking negatively about anybody, if I keep it up, there's going to be a very high cost to this approach. And we cannot afford to live with hate. Raymond Charles Barker said we are living in a world, and this is probably 40, 50 years ago, so it's only increased, where knowledge is rapidly accumulating. There's this thing called the knowledge doubling curve, which I've talked about before. There was a study, and we think that all of human knowledge used to double every 100 years, then every 50 years, and then every month, and now we think all of human knowledge doubles every few days. Well, that's staggering to think that, you know, our species, humankind, is just the amount of information and knowledge is like, it's happening at warp speed. And he said there's more conscious intelligence in our vast galaxy now than ever, any time in the world. I mean, more people like really, you know, you're connected, we're connected through, we have instant connection with people all over the globe. And so we have this great evolving conscious intelligence in the galaxy. But with people, it's still a much smaller world. You know, education has played a part. Everybody loves education and knows it's important. And education helps you with jobs and to grow and expand. But it hasn't caught up with some of the ideas of peace and love and greater love and unity. Barker was trying to make the point that with all these reports of the increased millions of educated people in the world, he says you're seeing equal number of problems in your news, in your headlines and television all over the globe. There's increasing difficulties like we've never seen before. You see it with the planet, you see it with the environment, you see it with conflicts with people in different nations. So we have this population, you know, life is unfolding, right? Spirit is unfolding through everybody, and so we're all becoming far more plugged in tune, educated. Barker said education in and of itself is not the remedy for everything. It's not what he called the panacea of the world, because he said there's millions and millions, tens if not hundreds of millions of people who are educated, and these folks, and I would include ourselves, as educated as we are, we're still at odds with ourselves, first of all, and then with the world. That was a very interesting thing for me to discover. He said, no matter how educated we are, we still oftentimes are at odds with ourselves, and then with the world. So as you come into this teaching, we know we do our work where? In mind, and we do our work with ourselves. I've always realized the biggest project I have in my life to work on is going to be me and my own consciousness. Because the thing is, when you get that part of it right, then all your life will start to change. And this is where we're unique. It's not that we're the only teaching that teaches this, but we really are focused on getting our own acts together. Because as you really learn to love yourself, you'll learn through the Louise Hay material, everything in your life begins to work. And Ernest Holmes would be saying the same thing. As an example, I thought of as I was putting my notes together this weekend, I have a couple of friends who are highly intelligent. A couple of them are PhDs, there's a Mensa person, there's might be 2 of them are Mensa. Mensa are people who are like 98% intelligent, like they're like super smart. But these people, each of them, and I was thinking of 3, now I can think of 4 as I'm talking, each of them have so many problems, I would not want their problems. I swear to God, because I listen to them. One of them is always angry at someone. Well, it's just, it changes by the month, but the individual's always angry at someone. And then the other one always dislikes, many things and many people. And the individual lives with a lot of contempt. And I was thinking as I was preparing this, I haven't thought of her in many years. I have an aunt. She's passed away. She was probably the most educated woman I ever knew when I was a kid, because she had doctorates when nobody even went to school. And she had 2 of them. She had 6 children, as I remember, 5 or 6. And her husband left her, and she was beautiful, and she was smart, and she was angry as hell. And her husband left her, he got involved with somebody else, and the whole story. And that lady had to have been the most miserable person I've ever known in my life. I saw her take it out on my mother. I saw her take it out on my father. Whenever I was around her, she found it necessary to rip me to shreds verbally. I mean, she was really a piece of work. And when I was younger, I probably would have said, well, so she had such a tough life. All these things happened to her, and all these tragic things happened, and she had children, and but now, I look back after her with all these years, and with a different understanding, and I know this, my aunt, she played a role in all of it, because as smart as she was, she could have done anything. She could have built an aircraft, she could have run a company, she could have run 10 companies. She was always plenty smart enough, and she was educated. She had all the degrees in the world. But she also made a lot of tragic choices. And this is where Ernest Holmes would say, there's power that we have. And, life is going to reflect, what you think into it, what you believe. And when you really believe in yourself and you utilize your power, you can create a really constructive, helpful, wonderful life, an expansive life. Because we really do have choices. But that lady, this aunt I'm referring to, I'm not going to call her name, after her marriage ended, she stayed angry and she stayed bitter, I think, for the rest of her life. I remember talking to her a few months before she died, and she was saying, when she was blind, oh, they sent me cards, and oh, they tried, and oh, they did, I should have done this, and I should have done that, and I should have done that. And she was talking to herself, and she couldn't see me, and I thought, my goodness, this woman had all the talent, all the beauty, and everything in the world, but she was in a fight with herself all her life. And things happen. And I remember thinking, I didn't understand it at the time, that all that anger and all that bitterness impacted her, and it really destroyed her. And I know those cousins of mine too, they're very bright, but they have lots of issues. As you would if you grew up in a family where all of that type of pain was constantly being expressed. So the kids had scars enough for a lifetime. I'm sure they've worked through a lot of them. Each of us are born into families where we get a mixed bag of messaging from our family, right? And every parent, parents, grandparents, mothers, fathers, all the people who had an impact on us, the way we look at it here is everyone was doing the best that they can with, with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that they had. I had a great family, but they had problems, and those problems impacted me, and that became the things I had to work through as I got a little bit older. If we have anger, like some of the people I'm thinking of, these educated people and my aunt, the anger, becomes fueled with rejection and resentment, and people hurt people. They take it out on others. I remember my father saying regarding this aunt was, his sister, he said, if she's so smart, he said, she is so smart in so many ways, but she wouldn't know enough to get out of town and just stop doing it, because she could have. And a lot of us are like that, right? There's a lot of people who are very bright, but education is not everything. Education is important, but it's not everything. My dad was really bright, and he was kind of like a science mind student without even knowing he was. What he was saying is these patterns of anger and hatred and resentment kept his sister locked in. So she was really a prisoner of her own belief system. And, if she had just made another decision along the way, that I released this marriage, I released this situation, and in some way, found a way to go forward, she had every gift in the world a person could have. Even though the whole world, the whole world keeps going forward, and the whole world is always giving us all green lights and new opportunities. But we won't see the opportunities if we have our blinders on. If you're stuck in a resentment or you're angry, you're not going to see the opportunities. You've heard from scriptures, the kingdom of God is what? It's at hand. You really can experience beauty and joy and new opportunities, new relationships, new jobs, new everything. But you'll miss all of those opportunities if you're stuck and you're talking about yesterday and what someone's done to you. If you keep living from those past places and past relationships and places of hurt. So we get stuck. It's very easy to get stuck. Our teaching tells us, if you can get yourself into a new moment, and Raymond Charles Barker will always say, yesterday ended last night. So he will suggest, be in a new moment. We, as thinking, creative beings, we are creating people, and I can create you. I'm looking at Celia or Jimmy. I can create you to be my friend. I can create you to be horrible people. I can create you to be whatever I want to create you to be. And that's what we do. We're creative people, and we can create people to be monsters or kings, and we can create them to be everything in between. I used to be told in one of my classes, the teacher would call us, okay, Shakespeare, what script are you writing today? What script are you writing this week? What are you creating this person to be? Because more often than not, this is going to be something you're doing about someone. It really has less to do with them than it does with ourselves. So what we do here in the teaching is we keep coming back to centering ourselves and knowing that we are sparks of the divine, we are one with the one, and we wake up to the fact that we have a creative, as individualizations of God, as part of this spiritual energy, we have the opportunity in new moments to create peace and to extend love and extend forgiveness. In forgiveness, as soon as you can center yourself and just stop going out there towards others and be quick to forgive. Be quick to understand, okay, look, they're doing things that I don't understand, but I don't need to judge them. We don't here teach any particular scripture in our lessons. We use good writings from many different scriptures and religions. So this is why our teaching is really open to so many people. We attract Jewish people, Christians, we attract all kinds of religions here because it's based on common sense. It was, can't think of her name, who described, it might have been William James, said, this teaching is a teaching of healthy-mindedness. But I did look at unforgiveness, a few scriptures, as I mentioned, just related to forgiving. From Ephesians, it says, be kind to one another, be tender-hearted, forgive one another. And I think it went on to say, as I have forgiven you. Forgive one another. And from Mark, the question, who's the greatest in all the kingdom, right? And the master pointed over there to a child. And he said, unless you stop all the judgment, unless you stop all the anger and become like children who so easily express love, you're never going to find peace. You know, but what about my resentments? You know, this person did this, and you know, if you keep hanging on to that stuff. So that was the question that was asked of the master teacher. You know, who's the greatest in the kingdom? He points to the child. Unless you become like the child, you're never going to get there. Because if you're hanging on to all that junk, you know, who's got the problem? I had a great therapist years ago. Her name was Joyce. She used to give me a business card every week. And the question that was always on the back of the business card is, whose problem is it? And I thought, what the hell is this woman keep on asking me that same question? It's because who had the problem always was me. I always had the resentment. I was always the person who didn't like life as life was. As you fast forward in your life and you mature a little bit, if you're lucky enough to get into a 12-step program, or a place like this, they will suggest you start accepting life on life's terms. What does that mean? You know, Buddha would have said, whatever is best. So the thing is, you come to a place you realize, okay, you're at the perfect place, and all is well. And let's drop this anger, drop this resentment, and behold in front of you is the kingdom of God. And really, truly, even though it's tough to see sometimes, every encounter you're having in the world, you're having with another spiritual being. So every encounter in that sense is a holy encounter. It takes a lot to really wake up to the fact that I'm a spiritual being and I'm interacting with other spiritual beings. And I'm here to love myself, and as I'm able to love myself, then I'm able to extend that love to others. Then Matthew said, if you forgive others their errors, you will be forgiven. See, if you're carrying around a bunch of junk where you're judging everybody, first of all, that's not your job. And second of all, when you're doing it, it's bringing forth all that energy within you that, you know, where you could be experiencing loveliness and peace, you're caught up in those stories. And then from Luke, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that really would be what Louise Hay would have said when she said everyone is doing the best that they can with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that they have. I'm sure that idea that Louise Hay so famously penned came from the idea expressed in Luke. Ephesians would say, let all the bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you. All the malice, just put it away. Be kind to one another. Attempt to be tender-hearted, forgiving one another. Another part of Ephesians, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only such as good for building people up. Building people up. This is what we attempt to do in our teaching. I was told years ago that this teaching is for people who want to learn how to be lifters. This is for people who want to see the good. This is for people who want to build people up. This is a teaching for people who want to build themselves up. Do you think you're going to be building yourself up by criticizing yourself and telling yourself you're dumb or not good enough or you're inferior or you don't count or you're not smart enough? Do you think you're going to be building yourself up when you're resentful and you're looking at other people and what they have and you're judging them, or you judge them anyway and you have negative things to say about people and you don't really know the whole story? The American Indians would always say, don't judge someone unless you've walked a mile in their moccasins. But you know, people judge people horribly and all the time. If that's happening, you're really not working this teaching. You're listening to the teaching. But when you're coming into this teaching, you're really trying to live a more spiritualized existence. You're really going to come from a place of connection. You're going to say, okay, I'm tripping here. I'm creating this person to be a lot of things, and I need to stop. Couple more. Luke said, judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and we would say early, late, and often. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. And I think we close the scripture quotes, at least, with Matthew, where he said, how often, when my brother is sinning, should I forgive? And then he said, as many as 7 times? Do I keep forgiving 7 times? You know, think of the people in your life. Oh my God, I got to forgive them again. They've stolen my money. I got to forgive them again. They've lied. I got to forgive them again because they've talked garbage about me. And the answer was, when asked, as many times as 7? And the answer was, I do not say to you 7 times, but I say 70 times 7. So that's a pretty clear indication that we forgive endlessly because truly, when people are showing up in life, first of all, it's none of your business how they show up, but they are showing up with the best of what they have. One thing I love about this teaching I learned probably 30 years ago, Bill Tolliver used to say, all of life is unfolding. And Greg, you are not the person you were 7 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago. You've grown, and I'm going to say that to everybody on the call, you've all grown. And if you read the book of Celestine Prophecy, they talk to you about looking at the long view. And you might think of yourself right now as like a monster. You might think, I'm really a mess, and you don't understand. I've got all these problems. And I understand. I've got my own version of that. We all have our own version of that. But the fact of the matter is, you've all grown, and you've all evolved, and you've learned more. And life is like school, and you've learned more. So, you know, we want to build ourselves up, right? We want to, it's good to make a list. Somewhere in this lesson, I suggested make a list of your accomplishments. I discovered that in the Frederick Bales work. In addition to having a gratitude list, which can be very helpful to remind you of the things you're happy about each day, having a little journal or something where you write down, you know, all the nice things that have been said to you, all your greatest accomplishments. It's important for you to have that in the forefront of your awareness, because each and every one of us have done some wonderful things in our lives, and we dismiss them very quickly because we live a very fast life. And if you want to start demonstrating greater success, it might help you to remember, first of all, that you are a success. So become aware of the things you've done. Remember the compliments that you got when you were little children and the things you've done, however small, and have that at your disposal. It will fortify you and help make you strong. So we want to forgive often. We are here to lift. We're here to extend our best. And it's not whether the person deserves our forgiveness. It's never our place to judge any of that. We're not extending our best for them. We are extending this so we can be restored to a place of peace and sanity ourselves. So, yes, Barker said, we were educated, and we know what's going on in the world. Human knowledge is doubling, as I said, every few days, but there's a tremendous amount of division of every kind everywhere. There's a whole lot of people disliking other people. There's political systems, there's social systems. Most of us have always thought that the universe is evolving in divine harmony. And that's what we teach here, even though it looks very, very messy. Each generation seems to leave behind, you know, an old layer of discontent and hatred. And the belief is that, you know, life is moving forward towards greater harmony. Certainly that's what we affirm, toward a greater unity. This is really what we teach. It's what we teach that the entire universe and all the activity in the solar system is a spiritual system, and that each of us are a part of this system. And we teach also that life responds to us whatever we deeply believe in our heart, whatever you truly do, not just what you say, but whatever you really deeply believe has a tendency to show up. This is commonly called the law of cause and effect. It is that you can talk a bunch of garbage. And that's not what I'm talking about, but it's what you take into your being and you believe. And what you believe plays out in your day-to-day living. I was speaking to a friend on the phone this weekend, and I was trying to give a quick introduction to the 4 agreements, which describes all the programming, the old agreements we had as we came into children. It's explained in different disciplines in different ways. Landmark education will say we have a racket. And we will say here that we have a belief system that we learned as we're kids, and it's been reinforced over and over again. We call it our BS, our blind spots, whatever it is. And this collective stuff that's within us is very powerful. And if you keep on thinking of yourself as worthless and you have very low self-esteem, that keeps on becoming outpictured again and again and again. If you keep on thinking that you're worthless, unforgivable, unlovable, then those thought forms, those patterns will attract your partners, they will attract the friends, and everything that will come to you will ultimately be there for you because it will bring forth great transforming lessons. It'll bring your inner belief system will bring forth everything that will reflect it. And so if you think you're not good enough and all of that, then you'll attract people that will you'll get to say, okay, I'm right. So what you really would want to do here is start working on self-esteem. I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. As you build that up using books like Louise Hay's book, the first couple pages, the whole list of things she talks about, as you build that up within yourself, what will happen is, and you have this sense of yourself, you write down, the things that you value about yourself, and you have a greater sense of your self-esteem. What will start to happen is you will reflect a different reality. Reverend Ike, I'm fond of, he was famous here in New York, said regarding this teaching, you just can't lose with the stuff we use, and you can't. We live in a spiritual system that's always seems to be getting at us, and what I'm saying is, you're part of it. You're definitely part of this one power. You are a point of awareness within this thing, and what it does. In your quietest moments, through your conscience, it speaks to you. It speaks to me in my dreams. It speaks to me during my quiet moments. It isn't just you meditating, God's going to give you answers. But the fact of the matter is you learn to commune with this teaching and learn to live what we call the affirmative life. Life will give you clues. And nobody has to punish me. I will punish myself, because if you live in close proximity and have an awareness of this power that's within you, it speaks to you and it guides you. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You can't silence it. You really can't run from it. I have a lot of friends in recovery. I've been in recovery myself for a long time. And people do all kinds of crazy things to quiet that voice that's within them. They'll get married and remarried, and they might have a lot of sex, they might have a lot of alcohol, they might have a lot of drugs, they might do all kinds of things to silence this thing that can never really be silenced. Because spirit, Ralph Waldo Emerson would say, is attempting to get your attention all the time. You have an internal guidance system. You can't silence it. So it's attempting to make you whole. Our founder, Dr. Holmes, I believe, said, each of you are an individualization of this one life. You're part of it. And everybody on this call in some way, somehow understands that they are part of something bigger than themselves. And each of you in some way, I know, understands that you are one with all your brothers and sisters. You're one with everybody. And that's really a beautiful thing to realize the more you allow yourself to. I'm one with the one, meaning I'm one with the energy, this one energy, call it what you want to call it. I'm one with it, and I'm one with all of life. Each of us realize that we're a part of life, one with life. We have an expression. It's a corny expression, but it's true. That there's not a spot where God is not. So it's a kind of like a corny little expression, but it's as true can be. This universe is alive. Everybody here is alive. And what are you alive with? What are you animated by? Yeah, Judith is here. She's the spirit. So the spirit that's alive in me today is equally alive in Jimmy here and Judith and all those faces out there that I can barely see. This spirit is alive in all of us. So you're living in this energy. You move in it. And here's the thing to understand. It is responding to you. So whatever it is you're thinking right there in your chairs, in your homes, whatever, spirit is responding to you. And what is it saying to you, whether you know it or not? It's saying yes, yes, yes. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm a worthless piece of so-and-so, it's saying yes. And if you're saying I'm a great success, it's saying yes. And if you're thinking each and every way and my life is getting better and better, and it's saying yes, it is. Emerson said years ago, the dice of God are always loaded. And as a kid, boy, I don't like hearing that because I had this fearful thing about God when I was a kid. I went to parochial schools and I had a whole thing about God, and I didn't like hearing the dice of God were loaded because I thought that meant I'm going to get punished. And what Emerson was really saying all those years ago is that there's this wonderful thing that's happening in life. There is this wonderful thing that's happening within you and within each one of us. No matter how badly we screw up our lives, no matter how creatively we mess up, that thing is still within you. The Bible will talk about the prodigal child. You've heard it before. The prodigal child leaves the kingdom, goes off and does wild living and really gets lost. But you really can't get separate from God because you're part of it, God. You're an aspect of God. God is in you, operating in you anyway. And as soon as you wake up from all that wild living and all that craziness, and you turn to the Spirit, you turn to the Father, it comes to you. You can't be separate from it, but you can always wake up and realize that you're a part of it. So we can't drink it away. We can't drug it away. We can't stop it. It's always going to be there. And it's always attempting to restore you. It's wooing you. It's trying to get your attention. And eventually, as you wake to it, the scriptures, as I said, it comes running right to you. You can't be separate from good or God, no matter how you try. We certainly turn our back on it. We can get very busy with all of our many projects, our addictions, our causes, but there will always be, it'll always be there. And here's the thing, you are the decider, Raymond Charles Barker said. You are the deciding factor in your own life. Life is responding to you as you choose. If you keep on putting yourself in an environment where you're being subject to negativity, that's a choice. I think of that aunt of mine. She's 30 years doing it. Nobody's ever going to make you wrong for staying where you are because that's not what we do here. But you know, you have the power of choice. Barker wrote the book, The Power of Decision. You can choose how to spend your time. You can choose who you hang out with. You can choose how to expand your horizons. You can choose to commune with some of the greatest minds that have ever lived. You can listen to some of the things we teach on YouTube or read some books. You can listen to TED Talks. You can do all kinds of things to put new information, empowering information into your consciousness and let that settle in you. And you can begin to expand and have a more expansive consciousness. You can choose how to build yourself up. I said before, it's a long time. From 1980, for 10 years, I went to a daily recovery meeting. For years. And I'm not going to talk about all that today, but I do remember a couple things that I will share. One idea that was told to me when I was very young, like 25, was surrender to win. Yes, surrender to win. And that doesn't even seem to make any sense when you hear it. Surrender to win. You don't usually think of winning something through surrendering or giving up. Another thing I learned that same first year is with that community, I was told that they were going to love me until I learned to love myself. These are two very powerful ideas. My life then was an outpicturing of what I'll call insanity. I was plenty smart enough as a kid. People would say I was educated. I'd been to college, and I noticed at the time I was pretty good at figuring out what was wrong with everybody. I was great at assessing what was wrong with everybody and figuring out all that stuff, and I was very much focused on what was wrong and what was missing with everybody and everything. And I knew absolutely nothing at that point about self-acceptance and self-approval. I knew how to point the fingers at everybody. And I didn't realize as I was pointing fingers at everybody, those were the things I saw wrong in people were my own issues. So we come into a teaching like this, sometimes we get dressed up, we look good. I see some of you here looking dressed up, you're looking good. And you sound good, and I sound good, but we can be dying on the inside, right? People live with amazing amounts of pain, and I'm reaching out to you today in the call today. And people develop what are called compensatory devices. In other words, we might hang on to relationships we shouldn't be hanging on to, or to make ourselves feel better. You might do all kinds of behaviors to make yourself feel good for a moment or a night or an afternoon. You might still be trying to be what your mother or your father wanted you to be or thought you ought to be. We might look really good, we might sound really good, but inwardly we don't feel that. Back in the days with gay people, I remember everybody was talking about pride. This would be like in the 1970s and 80s. And that's an easy thing to talk about, having good self-esteem and having pride. And coming from a place of connection is a much different thing than just talking about having pride. Talking about pride is talking. Having pride and having self-esteem is something altogether different. In those days, there was a lot of talk, but I didn't sense that there was a lot of inner self-love and self-appreciation. At least I didn't have any. And so you come into a teaching like this, and you begin to monitor your inner conversation, your dialogue. The one that you're having with yourself all throughout the day. You might start out again with a gratitude list in the morning. I've taught many clients over the years to do that, and honest to God, I swear it changes their life if they do it regularly and they read it to themselves. And you might start out with affirmations and meditation. And throughout the day, your goal is to keep that conversation positive. And remember that you are one with this creative activity. And if you keep on staying connected, you realize, I get to decide. I could see peace instead of this. I could see peace instead of this argument. I don't have to give my power away to my employer. You get to decide how today is going to be. And you might give your power away 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And in the programs will say it's never too late to start your day over. As soon as you see yourself reacting, you're going to say to yourself, stop. You're going to bring yourself back into the now. Raymond Charles Barker often said, yesterday ended last night. So let us all remember that. Yesterday, all the stuff you were talking about, all your anger, all your resentments, let it go. If you're in a program, do your 10th step. Just make a list of where you blew it and resolve yourself to, fix it. Do your best to redirect your thinking to be here right now. You can say to yourself, just for today, I can be happy. You can say the point of power is always in the present moment, and I can be happy in this moment. You could learn from Ram Dass to be here now. You can focus your attention on the now, and if you do, you will not be worried about tomorrow. You'll be here now. All the good is happening right here. So that's a little bit of spiritual discipline I'm asking of the group today, and we can talk more about this in the weeks to come and the lessons to come. Whenever you're reacting to something that someone is doing or saying, the first thing to realize is you can say to yourself, I could see this differently. I could see peace instead of this. Now, here's the thing. You might say, but they're wrong and they're doing this, and and you can go into that rant if you want to. But I'm going to say to you right here, right now, you could say to yourself, I could see peace instead of this. You don't have to see, you think you've got to react to everything, but you don't. So here's what I'm giving you today. I could see peace instead of this. You definitely have the ability, if you want to see peace instead of this. You have the ability not to participate in a bunch of garbage talk. You have the ability to say, no, look, you do that if you want to, but I release the need. Some of you want to keep on judging other people and say they know better, and that's like being self-justified. Just keep on like what's wrong with somebody. And I'm going to tell you, I've thought about this for many years, and I'll always come back to what Louise said about the same subject. When you're thinking about somebody else's consciousness, and when you're thinking about the totality of their understanding, you might think how imperfect they are. What Louise would say in that book is that everyone is doing the best that they can with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that they have. So judge them not. Because honest to God, look at your own life and the places where you have missed the mark. We're not here trying to screw up. We don't intentionally do so. So we want to begin to love ourselves and be able to extend that to other people. One word on this: nobody here is endorsing bad behavior. People are hurting people. We don't endorse any of that, but we're talking about taking a spiritual approach. We're understanding that life is unfolding everywhere, and everyone is at a different place of spiritual understanding. The spirit that's in me is evolving. It's the same spirit, though, that's in you, and you, and you, and everybody in this call. That animating thing in me is in all of you. The aliveness that's in me is the aliveness that's in you and everyone on this call. We're all connected to one another, and everyone in this call is sitting on holy ground, whether you know it or not. Some of you will have a problem with that. Some of you do not yet love yourself much. I told you 42 years ago, people said to me, we're going to love you until you can learn to love yourself. This is the reason spiritual centers like this exist. We don't have any fancy tricks for you here. We're not promising you salvation to save your soul. We don't judge anything you do. We don't think of you as a sinner. Just the opposite. We would tell you that your value cannot be estimated. Your value cannot be calculated. Your value cannot be appraised. The wonder of you. One of my old minister friends used to say, that thing that you have within you has been the best kept secret of the ages. And you wake to it. This spirit, this God, lives in you and responds to you. It's the hope of your glory when you meditate and understand that you are one with this spirit and you get to create the life you want. So here's the thing that you have everything you've ever needed or wanted right within you. You have direct access to it further. The universe, source, responds to what you believe. So it's time to do what Ralph Waldo Emerson said, is hitch your wagon to the stars. And so all he's saying there is believe in yourself, believe in bigger ideas, believe in more noble things. Don't take the low road. I'll invoke Michelle Obama. When they go low, go high. Keep going higher. You can't keep believing you're unworthy, and you can't keep on thinking you're a mistake and that you're broken and there's something wrong with you, and then expect you're going to demonstrate success and have a wonderful life. It doesn't work that way. So you've got to do the work in yourself first. There needs to be an internal shift, and you might go, if you were in programs, you'd be taking inventories. You really want to identify the stuff that you have within you. See, there's nothing wrong with you except you have a bunch of beliefs. Some of them work to your advantage, some of them don't. There needs to be an internal shift, and I'm talking about at depth. Information on sticky notes on your mirrors that I love myself is good. It's a starting point, but you need a deeper shift where you really get to the point where you can know and you can believe I am good, I am valuable, I am loving, I'm lovable, I'm prosperous, I'm generous. And get to that point where you really, I love, accept, and approve of myself. When you start to believe these things, then watch what will happen. You're going to be amazed before you're halfway through with the process. We teach affirmative prayer here. It's very powerful. And it will take a lesson or two. I will teach it to you personally, or we'll have a lesson. And affirmative prayer is not about wishing and hoping. It's more about aligning yourself with what the universe is. When you think about the source or the power that's available to you, people usually come up with words like, it must be powerful. It must be about love, joy, beauty, and wisdom. With affirmative prayer, we're going to quiet ourselves down, and we're going to center ourselves in this God awareness and connect with this energy. And then after we've made that connection, we're going to know that we're whole. We're going to know that we're peaceful. And we're going to realize ourselves as loving beings and lovable. And you're going to, that you're whole and you're healthy, and whatever you might see yourself, how you appear, you're going to know that you're beautiful. And we're going to keep on this line of thinking until in that prayer process we feel a shift within ourselves, until there's some sense of acceptance of this beauty and this wholeness that is within us. We're moving from a conscious thought, and we're bringing these powerful ideas into a deeper place within us. And in this process, if there's any doubts that come up, and doubts come up, we will show you in that prayer process how to deal with the doubts. And you will learn how to do this type of affirmative prayer. And as you do, you will uncover places within yourself that need more loving attention. And I'm happy to present a class like this to show you how it's done. Here's the thing to know about it, though. We have a process that's powerful, but it is you that has, it's you that has the power. We can teach you, right? But you have the power. All we can do is show you the process. And that's all any of us can do. One of the wonderful things about our teaching is, for the most part, we're working on ourselves. We are minding our own spiritual business. Famously, that's what Louise famously said. And she said, when you love yourself, everything in your life is going to begin to work. It won't take that long either. You might have been creatively self-destructing for many years, but when you begin this journey, things start to move. I promise you, the more you're able to love and accept yourself, approve yourself, you're going to have a different kind of life. And you're going to develop compassion for yourself, which you'll naturally extend to others. You'll understand people better. You'll understand what they're doing. You're going to understand where people are, and you're going to judge less. So let me carry on here. Ernest Holmes once said, there's a bank account that's been established for every one of you downtown, and it's overflowing with good, filled with money and every good thing you could ever imagine. So you're one with this Father, this love, and you've been given a tremendous account that you can draw from. Your name's printed all over it. And the only thing you have to do is to learn how to receive the good which is here. The kingdom of hand is here. It's here for you. And yet people are looking for this good everywhere. You think it'll be in the next boyfriend, the next girlfriend, or the next sale, or the next accomplishment. You think your good is there. You know, people search outside themselves. Most of the world look for satisfaction out there. And most of the world is living in complete reaction to everything in their life. Madison Avenue will tell you the clothes you should wear, the size your body should be, and what's attractive or what's acceptable. And we've been raised by our own family. We have a whole bunch of stuff from them, and we have a whole bunch of beliefs and resentments and grudges, and all this type of stuff just stops us from living in joy. So once again, on this given Sunday morning, we have the opportunity to make a decision. We have an opportunity to forgive ourselves for everything, to let it all go. I release the need to criticize myself. I release the need to criticize others. And I'm going to make a powerful decision today, and I'm asking you all for yourselves to, once again, starting here and now, and I'm going to make a decision to elevate my discussion. I'm going to make a decision to become more committed to the most important person in my world, and for each of you, I hope you say that's you. More committed to my own thought process and keep lifting myself up. And yes, the dice of spirit, or the dice of God, are loaded. They're loaded because life is wanting you to live a bigger life, a life that's more expansive, a life that's more about the possibilities. This kind of spiritual life woos you, it lives in your conscience, it speaks to your dreams, it's in all your quiet moments, it's always encouraging you to express more life, to be more authentic, to be more you, to come into a fuller expression of who you've come here to be. Not a soul is in competition with anybody else. There's only one of you in all the world, and if you think about that, that's amazing. Why would you ever want to criticize something that's so unique and beautiful in the world? Starting here, starting now, I want you to remember some of the most wonderful things that have ever been told to you that matter to you. Write that down so you can remember. Bring your mind to places where you felt good, and things you've done. Have a little list, of your proudest moments. Have something written down so you can remind yourself of the success you have been and the success that you are and how wonderful you are. The problem with people is they move so quickly from thing to thing to thing, they don't really have a chance to savor the successes that they've achieved and to remember them. And it's important. It's like having a great tool at your disposal. In our classes, in our study, we learn how to pause a little bit more. And I'm kind of big on gratitude lists, but this little list of the things every kind of thing that's ever been told to you, to write it all down. And I think I got this, I did this in this Frederick Bill's class, and I've been doing it myself, remembering all the successes, and boy, that really builds you up. So it was a powerful experience for me, and I suggest you all might try it. I remember all the discussions I had when I was younger with my father in that process as a kid, and all the wonderful things people told me. I wrote all of that down, and that really can build you up if you take the time to do that. I hadn't thought about some of these people in about 40 or 50 years, so my suggestion is write down all the good things that have ever been said to you, or the things you've accomplished. And it's like building up a spiritual muscle. Remind yourself that you're good, you're wonderful, and the sky's the limit. And today's subject, which is unforgiveness, Dr. Barker challenged everyone to watch your thoughts very carefully, right? Because you're being bombarded with negatives from all quarters. So he was referring to the fact that your thought is creative, and we're being bombarded with damaging, negative thoughts over the airwaves and TV and radio. So we're bombarded by all this, and we need to be careful not to get caught up into it. If you're living in an atmosphere that's distinctly negative, what can you do about it? Wherever there's situations like that, begin changing the channel. Finding new friends, focusing on things that are expansive, right? So that's the suggestion. He said the world's opinions, if you keep tuning into the negativity, they come into your consciousness very quickly, and they can sway us. The best thing I could suggest for anyone, some of us, we attend classes here or someplace like this every week. Tune in. I tune into my recovery meetings. They keep me sane. Tune in here. It's the same thing. Because if you keep plugging into life-giving information, and information that will remind you how wonderful you are and how good you are, it will help. And what does all this have to do with the subject of forgiveness? For my closing, all forgiveness is really self-forgiveness. Your world is a result of your combined state of thought and feeling, and that's your area of consciousness. If your world is a result of your state of consciousness, then if you're hating anyone and you're holding grudges and resentments, what you're really doing, you're disliking a part of yourself. You always see your consciousness in the world. So be careful of that. Let your brother, your sister do what they want to do. Live and let live. Let them say whatever they want to say. Thank God we live in a free country. People can say whatever they want to say, and that's none of our business. Let people be pleasant or unpleasant. I referred to you before, I used to have my nose out of joint all the time, and I had that great therapist who always said, whose problem is it? In other words, why am I letting myself get all twisted up about anything that anyone is doing? It's none of my business. I'm sure most of us realize that taking care of ourselves is a full-time job. And whenever we find someone acting out, and people will always be acting out, it's still none of my business. It might be your business to move out of the room or out of the house, but don't try to change anybody. That's not appropriate. Don't try to stop people from being who they are. And I know that's difficult, but people are wherever they are by right of consciousness. This is a principle from the science of mind. It's a principle from Al-Anon and other places. Step aside, let them do whatever they want to be. I'm going to close with one last memory. Chuck C. was somewhat of a star in the recovery movement, probably 40 years ago, 35 years ago. And I think he knew 4 of the presidents, and he was on the talking circuit for a long time speaking. You could look him up. He's not so anonymous anymore. He wrote a wonderful book entitled A New Pair of Glasses. And I think I heard him speak probably 30 years ago. And he asked a question. There are thousands of people, and everybody stood up and gave this guy a standing ovation before he even spoke. And he was describing a life of complete misery where he spent a lot of time in jail, and he lost a lot. And he was out there in California. And here he was at this point in his life. He had known the past 4 presidents and been to the White House. And after all the thunderous applause, he says, "You want what I got?" And then everybody went crazy. They wanted the applause. Yes, they want what he had, right? Thunderous applause. And at the time, he was probably, looked like he was about 80 years old. And this little old man reached up to that microphone and yelled out to the audience, "Surrender," in the loudest booming voice I'd ever seen. If you want what I got, the one word, he says, I can teach you the whole thing with that one word, surrender. And everybody went nuts after he said that. So I digress a little. That book of his, a little gem, the title alone tells you what you need to know. Since all thought is creative, you can imagine what his book is going to say. It was entitled A New Pair of Glasses. It's suggesting that if you ever read it, to find a new way to look at everybody. See everybody as a spiritual being. Ernest Holmes, I'm convinced, absolutely knew this guy, Chuck C. And on the same subject, Dr. Holmes says, you look out at your world through an atmosphere of your own thought. So if you're generally filled with positive expectancy, that's the way you're going to see the world. The tendency of your thought shows up everywhere. And then he said the next line, which usually people have to think about for a few weeks. He said, the thing you're looking for is the thing you're looking with, and it's the thing that you're looking at. That one requires you to kind of like think about it. I'll say it one more time. The thing you're looking for is the thing you're looking with, and the thing you're looking at. Dr. Holmes said, if there's people in your world whom you dislike, they are in your world because they are part of your consciousness. Let the dead bury the dead, meaning let all these situations go. They are not important. Your grudges, your dislikes, and your animosities do nothing for you, and they do nothing to hurt the other person, but they will wreck you. It's good spiritual insurance not to carry grudges. We do not believe we should be sweet to everyone who's unpleasant. We don't teach people to grin and bear it. We teach people to face facts. There's been great spiritual leaders throughout history most of us are familiar with, who have been familiar with the teaching of Jesus. The reason they can change the world is they meet situations in different kinds of ways. And this is the reason they came into the world. There will always be people to hate, and there will always be enough fools to hate them until we awaken to the world and understand that the whole world is consciousness. And all these people that we're hating are, in fact, our brothers and sisters. The people that we do not like are challenges to us. What other people think about us are none of our business. Our entire business is the operation of our state of consciousness. People may dislike you. They can do anything they want. It's not, whatever they do isn't very important. Within you, though, is an integrity of spirit. Within you, there's a capability to look out at the world through your own state of consciousness and see it as good. You need to live with peace within yourself. And this is why Jesus in the 18th chapter of Matthew said to Peter that he should forgive others 70 times 7. Jesus lived in a world which did not like him, but he prayed and he liked the world. He lived amongst the groups of people who thought he was vile, and he calmly loved them enough to heal them. You can do this. You can go into your office tomorrow, these jobs where you think people are working against you, and you can think, no matter what anybody says unkindly to me, I'm going to stay in my own mind, and I'm going to say to my own mind, there's not a word of truth to it. I don't care. I believe within these people, all of these people, is a spiritual possibility and a perfection. I behold the good in them. I behold the good in myself. This is what it is to practice the teaching, to see the good and the God in every encounter. And this is true forgiveness. And so it is.